fear will always be there. And it's what you do in the presence of fear itself matters. And it's actually an amplifying power. If you can stand up to fear and use fear and use it in a way to amplify whatever you're doing, that's growth. That's walking into the uncertainty, the unknown, and is in no way is it pleasant or fun or easy, but it is worth it. And there's an immense amount of growth that can be had when you can start to lean into fear and almost use fear as your guide.
Welcome to the Drew Pearlman Show. Think of this podcast as the antidote to the fear, the noise, and the talking heads in the news. The show features an entertaining blend of ancient wisdom, empowering ideas, and cutting-edge, healthy living science to optimize your health and your life. All right, let's dive in and get started. Today's guest on the show is Matt Menks. Matt grew up in athletics. He was a Division III college football walk-on. And for 7 years, he was Syracuse University's strength and conditioning coach for football, men's lacrosse, and women's lacrosse. And he then transitioned to become a sports performance coach, and then also dove into alternative health with massage therapy and traditional Chinese medicine. Welcome to the show, Matt.
I appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah, it's great to be with you today, Matt. And I mentioned that we were talking earlier. I found Matt on Instagram, and Matt has one of the all-time great names on Instagram. It's called Circadian Man. Matt, where did that name come from?
Yeah, I appreciate the shout out there. And recently, I think people are starting to stumble upon my page, and that's connected me with some like-minded people who know what circadian means. I know when I first transitioned into that handle, a lot of my friends and family were like, "I don't even understand. Why is he switching his name to circadian? I don't even know what that means." But now it's becoming a little bit more mainstream. So hopefully the message is starting to resonate with some people. But circadian for me, I've always grown up outdoors, at the beach or hanging out in the sun and just connecting with nature. And, through my career in athletics and sports performance and strength conditioning, I began almost put myself in a little bit of a box. I was living in, a collegiate weight room and a weight room for 10, 12, 14 hours a day, and really was not connected to the outdoors. And when I began to transition into massage therapy school and the private sector as a sports performance coach, I had a little bit more time on my hands, and I used that time to kind of dive into some podcasts specifically around health. And I stumbled upon a man named Jack Cruz, who was recommended to me by one of my mentors. And, this guy, Jack Cruz, is a neurosurgeon out there in the Bayou area. And he was one of the first people speaking about light health and how it impacts our health and our well-being and all our hormonal systems. And, through light and our environment in light, we are then aligned through our circadian rhythm. And this was probably almost 4 years ago. And, for me, it kind of just, everything began to click for me. It was like, oh, I was at one point in my youth, very vibrant and healthy when I was outdoors and mostly in the sun, having that olive skin. It was something I always enjoyed, being healthier when I had a nice tan, but it was more about, the photons I was receiving from the light. And once I really started to dive into this rabbit hole of light health and, reconnecting with nature, it was a no-brainer for me to kind of transition to that handle.
That's great. That's awesome. Yeah, I know when we were talking on the phone, Matt, you mentioned just how big of a part nature is in your life. And, why do you think nature is such good medicine for all of us, really?
Yeah, I mean, that's an awesome concept and an awesome question. I think nature, it's relative. So I would say that nature is so powerful now is because of how disconnected we are from it in our current societies. I think there's a Native American saying that they don't really have a word for nature. It just, that's what it is, right? It's something, the environment that we just it's Earth, right? And from just our environments now and society and how it's designed and what we're really the path that we kind of live by is disconnected from that. And I would say that the reason why nature is so powerful now is because we're so disconnected from it. When we do plug into, these scenarios and these environments, it's almost like our body remembers how good we're supposed to feel when we're, surrounded by, natural, scenic backgrounds such as trees and natural shapes and vibrant colors such as green and blue, and not just exposing ourselves to these boxed, type of concrete, windows and frames and more man-made shapes. These things are influencing our state, our homeostasis, but even our neurochemical levels and balances and just overall states of being and health and balance. So I would say yes, good medicine and medicine that we can all start to take more in of.
Totally, totally. And you were telling me that, being here in the Northeast or New York area, that, I mean, the temperature can go to pretty extremes in the winter and the summer, and that you've built your own sauna. I thought this was the coolest thing. You built your own sauna, and you also build an ice bath. And I'd love to just talk about, the way in which you've kind of embraced nature and the seasons by doing these types of things.
Yeah, I would also segue, before I got into light health and Jack Cruz and the circadian rhythm stuff, I was also getting into Wim Hof a number of years back. And at one point, given my career working as a strength coach in Syracuse, New York, the winters were absolutely brutal. It was cold, it was cloudy, and it would snow from, October to May pretty much. And the winters were tough. But I stumbled upon a Wim Hof book and the Wim Hof method, and it allowed me to use some of his breathing styles and his cold exposure to kind of brave the elements a little bit and not be so using the cold as an excuse to not get outdoors or not train outside. And it was like, no, this guy's shirtless, barefoot, up on Everest doing his thing. And as example to if we can do certain things where we can plug back into the nature regardless of the temperature or the environment itself. So again, being in New York, in the Northeast, the winters are cold. They're not brutal, but they're cold. And, these are things that, I started to do was to take a lot of my personal methodology and how I, theorize and value how much time we should be spending in nature. And that includes when we're training and lifting weights and getting exercise. And so I've kind of started to bridge the gap between nature and our exposure to nature and taking that into the athletic performance and the fitness and the health worlds. So for me to really value taking whatever you can do and train and lift weights and your exercise, pretty much do the best you can to take that outdoors. Take your stuff and get it out in the driveway, or, if there's something you can do at home that you don't need to go to the gym for, do that at home. And so the sauna for me, it was, I did want to still continue to train outdoors in the winter. And it was, some days are okay, but some days it's pretty freaking cold. And I've always been into the sauna stuff. I know Laird Hamilton and the XPT do, and a lot of guys are, and Joe Rogan even, they're always in it. And I've been doing it at one point in my life, and I always really, really, really felt good after. I'm like, well, I need one. I know this is something I want to get going in my own life, my own training. And, this was one of my first quarantine projects was, I had more time and I had this urge and this desire to have a sauna, and I've always been thinking about purchasing one. And then I'm like, screw it. I can DIY it. I can YouTube it. And then 3 to 4 weeks later, we had one built up in there in the backyard. And that, again, allowed me to continue to train outdoors, even in the winter, when the temperatures are in the 20s and the 30s. I can begin a session or end a session in the sauna, get my heart rate up and get a nice sweat going. And then I can take whatever I have to do, even if it's, somewhat of a blizzard or got snow on the ground. My body's still capable and able to regulate a temperature through the sauna use. And I do that in the winter. But in the summer, I kind of do the opposite. I'm still outside. But, I have an ice bath. I have, your standard 13 cubic foot ice chest freezer that, is big in the, the health and performance world now. It's like you can fill it up with water, you plug it in for a couple hours, and now you have cold temps, under 40 degrees that you can immerse yourself in and sink in, again, before or after your training sessions. That not only is going to give you all the cold thermogenesis effects, but it also, again, allows me to still continue to train outdoors now, even in the summer when it's 90 plus outside.
Wow, that's great. So do you recommend, so you really recommend that people really look for ways to bring their training, to bring their weights, bring whatever it takes to get it outside? I mean, have you noticed, what are some of the benefits that you've noticed about training outdoors?
Yeah, that's awesome. And I have a hashtag that I like to spread out there. It's called solar power. And basically it's that if you can take, again, if you have access to your own stuff, or you can, have a garage gym with an open door, I strongly recommend you take as majority of what you do outdoors, outside from the fluorescent light bulbs and just the boxed view of your commercial gym, and to get your skin outside, get your feet on the ground, and get your mitochondria available to the rays of the sunlight. And that's kind of like what I determined what solar power is. It's we have a certain semblance of a solar powered function in our cells. So as the sun rays are penetrating our skin, they're actually manipulating our mitochondria to increase their capacity for energy. And if you look in a standard biology textbook, you see 1 or 2 mitochondria in the cell, and that's somewhat, some ways not as accurate it could be. Sometimes we have up to 1,000 per cell. So these things are jam packed, and they're very right on the superficial layers of our skin. So we're basically like a walking solar panel, and there's this immense potential for energy that we are exposing ourselves to when we're outside and we're under the sun. So, not only is it, I would say, psychologically healthy for us to kind of get outdoors and immerse ourselves in, again, exposing ourselves to these natural colors and shapes, we're also getting an energetic surplus and a transference from the sun into our skin and into our mitochondria.
Beautiful. And then you also simultaneously have some connection with the Earth's surface. You take off your shoes. How do you do that, connecting with the Earth as well as, getting the energy from the sun?
Right. So when I'm talking about energy, for some of the athletes or the general population, people that I help, it's, we Dunkin' Donuts logo. It's like America runs on Dunkin'. It's like, not really the case here. Like, we run on energy. We run on energy potential. And if you can just have some basic knowledge of thermodynamics, and that energy is never created or destroyed, it's actually just transferred from, one source to the other. So when we're outdoors, and like you said, when our bare skin is touching the Earth's surface, there's a transference of electrons and energy exchange there. And so we can assemble energy in multiple ways, but simply we can have ions from structured water. We can have electrons from the Earth's surface, and we can have photons from the sun. And if we are in reference accumulating some of these this potential energy through ions, through electrons, and through photons, our potential energy, our potential to be active and for all our cellular reactions to occur, but also our physicality to occur, is going to be much higher. So again, the grounding is such a hot thing in the health and wellness world. So, again, that's another added bonus that you can do outdoors. If you're training, you could pop the shoes off and you can get out and hopefully touch some grass and get those free electrons too.
Beautiful. And so, Matt, you mentioned Wim Hof and the Wim Hof breathing. What does your breathing practice look like now? I mean, do you have a daily thing that you do every day, or how does your breathing practice look right now?
Yeah, the Wim Hof thing was awesome. I don't do it as consistently as I once did when I was diving into his stuff. I would say every other week, maybe I do sit down and I do hit a nice, couple rounds of some hyperventilation and some breath holds. But I would say the most consistent thing I do around breath is nasal breathing. For me, it's something that, if you can look into Patrick McCown's book and some of the Buteyko stuff that, and also James Nestor's stuff that is, entering the health and wellness and performance worlds now, it's really about our awareness of our breath, but also understanding that our noses are for breathing and our mouths are for eating. And sometimes we get so dominant in mouth breathing. And that's actually not helping our performance in any way. It's actually, I would say, detracting from that. So to return our innate and natural ability to maintain nasal breathing throughout any amount of strenuous or non-strenuous activity is gigantic in ways that can help our ability to just regulate our nervous system, just give ourselves of a sense of awareness. And it's kind of like that bridge between your state and then having some semblance of control over that state, right? So your nerve a lot, your sympathetic tone, and being able to kind of access more of a parasympathetic, natural state. You kind of want to be there throughout the day, majority of the time. And then if and when you can kind of ramp yourself up or bring yourself back down. And it's really beneficial to be dominantly nasal breathing throughout the day, even if you're training too. So sometimes I'll do that where, even if I am, say, going for a run or about to go lift some weights or something, I'll sometimes tape the mouth closed or things of that nature where I'm still influencing that ability to maintain nasal breathing, even if my heart rate's going pretty high.
It's amazing how many things go wrong when you breathe through your mouth predominantly. We had James Nestor on the show a few months ago, and he was fantastic. And basically he said, in one sentence, he said, "Shut your mouth and breathe through your nose." If he could recommend anything,
that's right.
It's big. It's big. And then what about diet? I mean, I know a lot of your work is about getting back to those primal ancestral ways of living, being out in nature, but what about eating? How does that, what do you recommend for diet?
Yeah, I'm glad you kind of brought that up. Diet, and when you speak about primal and ancestral kind of perspectives around diet, I think I have a pretty unique one. And, I focus on, what is going in the body, yes, but I also focus on how that's actually occurring and our perspective about the actual thing that we're doing. So if you're going to put yourself in more of a primal ancestral lens to kind of see that and see eating and nourishment, we have to attach an emotional component to this. And I think this is dramatically lacking in our worlds, is again, seeing food and seeing nourishment and seeing the process of eating as an emotional experience first, and it's a physical experience second. And I say that because, I have a couple examples, but if you just observe a mother, right, and she just has just gave birth to her child, and the first experience from mother to child is an act of nourishment. And yes, there's a physical transference of nutrients that goes on through whatever that may be, the breast milk or whatnot. But you cannot discredit the emotional transaction that occurs there. There is a direct emotional transaction from the mother to the child and the provider to the receiver. And we kind of lose that as we age, right? We don't really attach our emotions to what we put on our body anymore, because it's, when you go to a supermarket, this is, what you grab off the shelf is not something that you grew. And there was no emotional investment into that. And if you are growing your own food, or if you have a garden, there is that emotional investment that goes into, watering the plants, making sure everything's seasonally taken care of, right? So in regard to that, it's fueling our body. I think if we can understand that, yes, it's a physical thing and the physical macro and micronutrients do matter, but if we begin to influence it and see it as an emotional experience, that definitely starts to change the value of it. It allows you to pick the better choice in the supermarket, but it also allows you to kind of sit down and chew your food and value the experience and hopefully share it with loved ones, and not rush where I used to do, like behind the wheel. Used to eating on the go all the time, never sitting, shoving food in my mouth. And I had this emotional disconnection to the process. So I see food and nourishment and eating as an emotional experience. And I teach people that it is an emotional experience. And when you can start to see it as that such first, then the choices become so much easier. It's like, oh, I want to choose, the colorful, nourishing, less ingredient, less processed kind of thing. It's like, because this is going to allow me to be emotionally more grounded, more stable, and it's putting myself in a better state emotionally. And that, I would say, is a primal ancestral lens and perspective to see it as well, because at one point we were growing our own food, we were hunting our own food. There was a lot of emotion that kind of went to it. went into it. And when you say did hunt that thing, or you did grow your thing, and then you sat down and now it's on your plate, you're damn grateful for what's on that plate, because you invested so much energy and emotion into that. And even just now, if you can just practice like some gratefulness before you consume your food, as to hopefully wherever it came from in a good way, I think it really changes the experience, allows us to be more parasympathetic and grateful, and then also attaches all this emotional component I think that's missing.
Wow. Love that. Yeah. I haven't heard anyone really talk about that, or at least not to the extent that you are. I mean, that's really profound. That's great. That's such a huge, like a missing piece, like what we bring to the meal, the gratitude, the love, the mindfulness. That's really important.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
Beautiful. So Matt, maybe talk a little bit about, you have a really interesting journey from being a football player, a walk-on too, and a strength coach at a major university, major program, and really going, sort of in maybe in a different direction into these Eastern healing modalities and philosophies. Maybe talk a little bit about the influence of, Taoism, the Tao, Chinese medicine, all these different practices, the influence they've had in your career, and also just, you as a person in your life.
Yeah, that's an awesome question. And I the more I speak about this, I guess the more it makes sense on my end, because a couple of years ago, when I decided to jump out of the collegiate strength and conditioning world, a lot of people didn't really know why, and I don't think I really knew why at the moment either. I just had this urge, this instinctual, feeling to kind of want to explore more. And again, I think what was easy for me is that I had 7 years of Division I experience before I was 30 years old. And it was almost like, yeah, this is awesome. It's a great job. I love it to death. But there's more to me that I still have to learn. And there's more to learn about, everything in regards to how I really see the human experience. And the strength and conditioning and the high level performance is only one side of that. And I think I was missing the other side, the other picture, the yin to the yang, if you will, like when you do understand a little bit of Taoism and duality. And I think the traditional Chinese medicine and the healing arts of massage therapy was like the perfect complement for me to, again, go from this, jock athlete as a kid to then this walk on, and then to this weight room junkie and training athletes at a high level. And then I really, again, was missing, I almost felt like I only had half of what I really needed. And then to kind of really explore traditional Chinese medicine and the Eastern philosophies and understand, how much empathy you need to have when you go practice some of these healing arts as massage therapy is, and do it through and from the lens of these Eastern philosophies such as Taoism. It for me personally, it dramatically changed, how I really see, my life and my passions, my curiosities, and how that all can begin to kind of weave together in one experience and one, say, service, I guess, for me is what I bring to the world. And Taoism, for me, it really helped bring more balance into my own life. It really helped me understand things for me. Being, again, almost very excess yang, if you will, kind of like yang junkied out as a young, most young teenage boys are, and young 20s are. And I don't think we really understand or at least taught the other side, that there is this restorative, nourishing yin function that, has to be assembled in some way or fashion in your life. And when you do not have that, and when you lack that, you're out of balance. And some way, in some form, at some point, you're going to reach an obstacle. You're going to reach an injury. You're going to reach, maybe some mental, emotional experience that is unpleasant. And when you can start to understand some of these, say, forces, if you will, of yang and yin, or masculine and feminine, or expansion and reception, and then kind of live in the middle. Know when to go and when to know. I say sometimes there's go time and sometimes there's no time. And this can influence not only your physical states and your physicality, but also, how you can perceive your mind and how your mind works, and your mental, emotional capacities, and also like your belief in beyond something bigger than yourself.
Wow. That's fantastic. So Matt, what are some of the daily practices that you do? I mean, you've already mentioned a few of them, but, if we were with you for a typical day in the life, what are some of the practices that help to keep you more grounded and peaceful?
Yeah, I love how you said grounded, because grounding is definitely one of them. For me, I really, you know, aim to be outdoors majority of the day. I aim to be barefoot as much as I can. If I don't need shoes, I'm usually not wearing them, and I'm usually literally connected to the earth as much as I can. But specific practices, as my day goes on, when I get up in the morning, I really do try not to set an alarm if I don't have to. I have, as I rise off the floor. My fiance and I, we sleep on the floor. That's another thing that we do. I can kind of talk about that as well. But as I get off the floor, within the first 5 to 10 minutes, I immediately go outside. I have a little deck out here, and I do some morning movement. But I'm orienting myself towards the sunrise, and I'm not using any glasses or contacts or anything really. It's more about, can I get this natural stimulus onto my skin and into my eyes, and then also mix in some exploratory movement. And what that does is kind of rehydrating the tissues, activating this kind of piezoelectric effect in our bones and our muscles to generate their own electrical charge, but also aligning my circadian rhythm through the exposure to light. And then also, then I, whatever it may be, if it's a little breakfast or whatnot. And I do, again, have this emotional component where I have this gratefulness experience, this kind of presencing mantra that I do each morning before I consume the food. And then, the work day goes on. Maybe it's some coaching calls or some athletes that I'm working with locally, and also finishing my last semester here in massage therapy. And then, I try to stay fit and active. So, I have some things out there that are a little bit out of the box in regards to training. But for me, it's really allowed me to kind of continue to feel young, spry, and athletic well into my young 30s here. So I have a little balance beam out there that I'm on quite a bit. I also have a trampoline in the backyard, which I'm always jumping on up and down, which gives me, again, more of this playful type of experience. I think that's can sometimes be lost in the typical jock meathead who's doing the same thing for a decade, and all of a sudden, like, working out's not fun anymore. And to reintroduce some aspect of enjoyment into the process of training is something that I think is vital for us as we age, because it is going to help us stay fit and stay healthy, but it has to be fun. So including such things as that, getting on the balance beam, jumping on the trampoline, also some very unstructured type of just dance moves, some good music out there. These are things to do that again, I feel almost like I'm aging in reverse. I always feel, in a way, I'm kind of getting younger, or at least my body's telling me that. So I know these things are beneficial for myself, but again, it kind of allows me to think outside the box and program outside the box, and continue for these methodologies and these theories and these applications to continue to evolve, because I work with people of all age groups, from youth to elder, and these things, I think, are distilled in a way that they can hopefully be applied for anybody to really experience health and vibrant life, which is missing, I think, a little bit here in where we're at now.
No doubt, Matt. A big part of the show and a big part of the work that I do, it's all about living against the grain. I mean, that's a big philosophy I've adopted, is just kind of everything's going one direction, and I kind of recommend going the other way. I love how you talked about on the phone. We talked a little bit about you were going to get a van, I guess, and take it out on a road trip, or just or live in the van.
Yeah.
And I love that whole, just willing to, embrace that, that living against the grain philosophy. Maybe talk a little bit about what you were thinking there.
Yeah, I mean, the van thing has been calling me for almost a decade. I was probably, when I first started getting interested in it, I was probably in my early 20s. And if I always would say to my friends, I'm like, that's going to be me one day. I'm just going to be jumping in the van, and I don't really need much. And I think it's, in a way, it's a very minimalistic type of perspective, but I also see it as like an essentialist. So again, there's so many things out there that we are extra, and in almost in a Taoist way, it's if you study a little bit of the Taoist way, it's like these guys would go off into the mountains and just live by their own, and we're very, 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 I would say, like the OG minimalists, these Taoists were, and I think the van life is kind of part of that. It's something that is yes, it's very exciting, and it's pleasing to kind of see on Instagram and social media. These people are out there taking pictures when, experiencing life, which we don't really get to when we're bogged down to one location and we have a job and all that stuff. So, there's many people that we see in the van that say, hey man, that was my dream. I really enjoy what you're doing. I think it is my dream to still do that. And at one point it was like, if this is something I want to do and it is a dream for me, it's time to fricking do it. It's time to figure out a way to get it done, and continue to kind of chase that dream and make it a reality. And once I really decided to kind of buckle down and get the wheels going a little bit, literally and figuratively, things started to happen. And I was hunting them vans down on Craigslist for months. Was able to stumble upon one, and a lovely family out there in the East End of Long Island. We're selling, a Ford Transit, and I looked at my fiance, and we said it was a no-brainer. We got it in our driveway 3 days later, and we began ripping it to shreds and building it out. And that was my second quarantine project. That was the van build. But again, it is, I would say 100%. It's a living against the grain. It's kind of doing, what most people aren't. And, if that's something that resonates and it sings true to you, I mean, these are the things that you should start to incorporate in your life now. There's so many things that you kind of die with as a regret. And if you can, sit there when you're 70, 80 or 90 and say, I almost checked everything off the list. And, for me, van life is still one of them, and continues to be, a force as to kind of how I'm starting to design my life to be hopefully more remote or virtual, or at least part-time, where I can, spend, say, 6 months in the van and then come back. So, yeah, man.
Love it. I love that. That's great. That's great, Matt. Hopefully I'm going to join you out there on the road.
Hell yeah.
So final couple of questions here. If someone's listening right now and they're feeling a little bit fearful, alone, powerless, what's one thing you'd recommend if they were with you right now that they could maybe do today to begin to take their life in a new direction?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I would say go watch The Dark Knight Rises and fast forward to the point where he just gets the shit kicked out of him by Bane, and he's in the pit and he's doing his sit-ups and he's getting ready and he's trying to get out of the pit, and he's got the rope. And he keeps trying to climb out, and he keeps stumbling, he keeps failing, and he keeps coming back. And then, the wise man in the pit says, how can you expect to run faster than you ever thought possible, jump higher than you ever thought possible, or do anything you ever thought possible without the most potent fear, the most potent force behind any action is the fear of death. And he tells Bruce Wayne, he says, let go of the rope and fear will find you again. And I think that's such an important lesson to understand, that fear will always be there. And it's what you do in the presence of fear itself matters. And it's actually an amplifying power. If you can stand up to fear and use fear and use it in a way to amplify whatever you're doing, that's growth. That's walking into the uncertainty, the unknown. And is in no way is it pleasant or fun or easy, but it is worth it. And there's an immense amount of growth to be had when you can start to lean into fear and almost use fear as your guide, and understand that when fear does find you again, that's probably a very good thing, as long as there's no risk involved, right? Fear doesn't automatically associate itself with risk or danger. Fear is just a feeling, and sometimes we're living in this fear without any risk. And if there is no risk, but there is still fear, that's probably exactly where you want to go.
Wow, that's great. All right, Matt, final question. If you could travel back in time, well, you'd be pretty darn young. I asked this question to Alex Lee, and he was like, I would have been like 1 year old. But so let me just change it a little bit. So if you could travel back in time, like 20 years or so, what words of wisdom might would your current self maybe share with your younger self?
Yeah, it's an awesome question. I would be about 10 or 11 years old, but I would tell myself to just continue to be yourself and never hide who you are. And, you don't have to change anything about yourself to get where you want to go. It's more about just taking that purest version of yourself into the world, and continuing to align with who you are and bring that truest and purest version into everything you do.
Matt, how can people that want to learn more about you and your work, where should they go?
Yeah, easiest way to find me is just at Circadian_Man on Instagram. I have some a small following there, but a lot of more of my own theories and methodologies, and what I'm about to share in this 2021 is going to continue to expand. I've been kind of quiet on the social media for a number of years, but I'm starting to really step into it there. And shoot me a message if you're interested on any type of health mentorship or coaching personally, or just continue to support my solar powering movement and the journey, hopefully in van life very soon.
Beautiful. Matt, thank you so much. This was great to connect with you.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Drew Pearlman Show. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. In the words of Mark Twain, 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than the things you did do. So throw off the bow lines, sail away from the safe harbor, and catch the trade winds in your sails. Explore, dream, discover, and stay well, everyone.